and gentlemen, please welcome our host for the day, the CMO of Udacity, Shernaz Daver.
Thank you and welcome. So we have a few seats available over here. So all you people standing over there, move on right here. Let's go, people. Welcome. It's just great to have everybody over here and with us along over here, as well as on our live stream. Today, we actually have everyone over here who are really the forward thinkers, the innovators, and the mavericks that you really saw in that film. We are all united today by the shared belief that learning has the power to uplift, to empower, and transform lives. Today, we have students in our midst that come from 29 countries. You come from countries like the United States, Belarus, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Brazil, China, Thailand, Japan, Macedonia. Some of you we know had difficulty getting visas. That was out of your control and our control. But you made it here, and we welcome you. We also have our amazing partners here with Didi, IBM, Amazon, Google, and many, many others. Thank you for coming here. It promises to be an inspirational day for you where you get to meet the Udacity global community. Today, March 8th, marks International Women's Day. And it seems fitting that our conference should be on this day. The world is getting increasingly divided, and often in that, it's the women that get left behind. Education is the most important way to empower people, to give them the opportunities they need to lead the lives they want. While we may not have deliberately picked this day per se for the conference, we did pick the venue deliberately because the Computer History Museum embodies everything that Silicon Valley is all about. For us, it's a very special place. The museum sits less than half a mile from the Google campus, LinkedIn, Microsoft, and Intuit. If you go 6 miles north, you land at Stanford University. If you drive 8 miles south, you are at the Apple Spaceship campus. Udacity, we sit about 1.5 miles from here. It's pretty hard to get any closer to the epicenter of Silicon Valley. The Computer History Museum was the brainchild of a person called Gordon Bell, who founded Digital Equipment Corporation. It started out in Boston and then moved to Silicon Valley about a decade ago. But because every Silicon Valley company has that proverbial garage story to it, the Computer History Museum happened to be in a trailer at Moffett Field for many years before it came into its permanent existence. The museum has always recognized people for their incredible contributions to the world, and you will see a wall of them outside of this hall. In fact, the first fellow the museum recognized for ideas that changed the world and affected humans was the indomitable woman, Grace Hopper. You'll see her photo right outside. Today, as you go through the museum, you will see Silicon Valley come to life. Right outside the entrance is the Fairchild Semiconductor exhibit with their founders. As you go through, you will see people who broke ground and defied gravity to create companies like Hewlett-Packard, Xerox PARC, IBM, Apple, Atari, Google, and many others. And then you will wander into the exhibit, which has a self-driving car that our founder, Sebastian Thrun, had something to do with. Today, you are the mavericks and the trailblazers, just like these people were. You are forging a trail of new learning and the opportunities it brings to affect people's lives. And someday, one of you could be the next Hopper, the next Page, the next Jobs, the next Bell. And you might be an exhibit in some museum somewhere in the world. We at Udacity hope to arm you with the learning you need to get there. Just so that one day, when you're in one of those museums, we can say, we knew them when they were taking a nano degree. With that, let me run through some details of the day. We have a packed day with panels in the morning, breakout sessions, and then a panel later on in the afternoon. And then we have an awesome party. We also have 23 companies that are waiting to talk to you about job opportunities, so make sure you visit them during the afternoon. There are some details. Cell phones should be turned off during the sessions. The wireless access is Intersect, the password being Udacity. Please be social throughout the day. These are our handles. Share talks, share pictures, share comments on everything along with the Udacity app. With that, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce the CEO of Udacity, Vishal Makhijani.
Thanks, Shanaz. Welcome to Intersect 2017. Welcome to the Computer's History Museum, and welcome to Silicon Valley. At Udacity, our mission is to democratize education. We started on this path when Sebastian and Peter Norvig put their AI class from Stanford online back in 2011. At Udacity, democratizing education means lifelong learning. What's lifelong learning? Let's talk about it. Today, we're living longer than ever. It means we'll have to work longer than ever, into our 60s and 70s. At the same time, though, we're experiencing unprecedented technological change. Technology is disrupting everything we know: retail, manufacturing, transportation, healthcare, even education, forcing us to learn new skills to stay relevant for a career that could span over 40 years. In fact, this idea is so relevant, The Economist, as you know, an amazing publication, featured the notion of lifelong learning in their January issue. I urge you to check it out. At Udacity, we aspire to be the place where you go to learn the skills you need to get that next great job. Today, we can't be limited by the knowledge that we learn in our early 20s. We need to be constantly learning. This isn't news to you guys, though. You guys already get this. But this is going to be the new normal for the foreseeable future. Udacity offerings enable lifelong learning. We're reaching into the future, giving you access to fields like AI, machine learning, skills that are going to be great for decades to come. In 2016, Udacity turned 5 years old. And yet, at this time last year, there was no self-driving car program, no virtual reality program, no deep learning program, no AI program. We hadn't launched something called Udacity Blitz yet. We hadn't launched Udacity Connect yet. And we hadn't even debuted something called Udacity Talks, where we talked to amazing folks from technology. And our Nanodegree Plus program was only a couple months old. All of that happened in the last year. At this time last year, we had 10,000 students in our Nanodegree programs. This doesn't count, of course, the millions of folks who take some of our offerings for free. In the past year, we've now reached 25,000 students just in that short period of time. That growth has been global, too. Last year at this time, our students hailed in our Nanodegree programs from 84 different countries. We've increased that over 60%. This year, our Nanodegree programs represent folks in 136 countries. And as Shanaz mentioned, we're so excited to have so many of you from many of those countries today. In fact, there's a map outside today, too, where you can see where every single one of our students hails from. It's really cool. You should check it out. Let's talk about our Nanodegree programs. Our Nanodegree programs are specifically focused to get you a job, from beginner all the way to the bleeding edge. In our Nanodegree programs, you'll benefit from mentorship, code reviews by real people, robust career support, and of course, access to amazing hiring companies. In our foundations programs, we teach you things like Android basics, and one of our most popular programs is Introduction to Programming. In fact, we just hit our 1,000th grad in IPND. In our web area, which is where our Nanodegree started, we help you become either a front-end or a full-stack developer. Our mobile offerings are comprehensive. We work very closely with Google on something called Android Fast Track that gets you trained and Google certified and ready to get a job as fast as you can. In fact, on Highway 101, which I know many of you were caught on this morning, you'll see a great billboard talking all about it. In data science, we have multiple offerings, starting from learning data science with absolutely no coding experience all the way up to machine learning. Our students are doing amazing things with their data science skills. In fact, they have amazing jobs as analysts in companies, as well as building platforms in financial institutions. Last fall, we started something called Only at Udacity. And these programs have been met with amazing demand. First, our self-driving car program. It's unique in the world. You can't do this anywhere else. We have over 5,000 students in this program already. You get to put your code on a real car. Our VR program launches you into the world of VR, helps you in platforms like Oculus and Vive, all the way to mobile. You'll see a lot more about VR this afternoon. Our AI program is a survey or overview of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the new frontier. As you might know, AI is helping in areas like cancer diagnostics, automating factories, and it's even in your home now with things like Amazon Alexa and Google Home. And finally, our Deep Learning Foundations class, which launches you into this category, was so popular just last month, we had to close it to new students. Today, we're proud to open up our second class in Deep Learning, and you can sign up today at udacity.com. Now, this world of online learning and lifelong learning is relatively new for the industry. So for that reason, we launched something called Udacity Blitz a few months ago. Blitz is our program to help our graduates demonstrate the skills they've been learning. So the way it works is Blitz allows companies to build specific projects. Our students build it, they get paid for it, and companies get to see how awesome your skills are. In fact, we encourage our company clients to steal you from our platform. Projects include everything from web apps to mobile apps, virtual reality to data science. And as I mentioned, I think we're up over 100 projects right now on Blitz already. We launched something else called Udacity Connect in the past year. Our online learning approach allows folks all over the planet to learn at a very reasonable cost. However, some folks want a little bit more. Inspired by our friends at Google in Cairo in Egypt last year, we launched Udacity Connect. And it was so successful, we started on a program to launch at a ton of other places. Here in the US, we launched in San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, and New York. In addition, we've launched in Warsaw and Poland, as well as Paris, Madrid, London, Berlin, and Saudi Arabia. Our students have performed amazingly well in Udacity Connect, making more progress and finishing faster than online alone. In fact, our most recent launch has been in Saudi Arabia. We're thrilled to be working with the Saudi government, and we plan to educate almost 3,000 people in our first programs there. And as Sarnaz was mentioning, today's International Women's Day. We're pleased to announce in our opening class in Saudi Arabia, half our students are women. We're excited to provide opportunities from folks with all kinds of backgrounds to reach their potential. In line with our mission to democratize education, scholarships are playing a role too. Udacity, along with amazing partners of ours, have been working to help people from underrepresented groups, from women, veterans, folks from specific geographies. We have programs for all kinds of them. By this time last year, we had granted 1,500 scholarships. Over the last year, we've 4x that. We're up to 6,000 scholarships granted. And much of the work has been, as I mentioned, done with some of our partners, specifically Google and AT&T. We're going to continue to expand our scholarship program, and you'll see it entering more markets and more areas over the next coming year. Numbers are awesome, but what really matter are individuals and students. Connie got one of our Udacity Transcendent scholarships and was able to earn a full stack nano degree with us. She's changing her life for her family and herself. In addition, Salvatore from Italy got through another Udacity scholarship, learned machine learning skills, and now has a job at Amazon. These stories are awesome and just great jobs by Connie and Salvatore. So now, while our focus is always on students, companies play a critical role in our ecosystem. Our promise to you, our students, is to always be working with the best companies for the best curriculum and for the best jobs. Last year, at this time, we were working very closely with 6 companies. This year, we're up to 65. Many of those companies are here today, and as Shernaz mentioned, you should make sure you get a chance to talk to some of them. These companies are the who's who in technology. They include giants like Amazon, IBM, Google, Facebook, Uber, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Bosch, AT&T, among others. There's also the startup community very well represented. Companies like Slack, Didi, GitHub, and a lot more. Soak all these in. We're going to continue to add to this list. It's critical to what we do here at Udacity. Now, what ultimately matters is turning all that learning and association with all those companies into jobs. By last March, we were able to track 350 of you students into jobs, and at this point, we're up over 1,000. They've been employed all over the world. 95% of our Nanodegree Plus students get jobs within 6 months, and over 20 of you have found jobs at Google. Increasing numbers are what matters, I mentioned before, but we also like to take a look at student stories. Let's talk about some of these amazing developers. First, James Patterson. Because of his tenacity, his hard work, and of course his Udacity experience too, James went from working at a McDonald's in Southern California to a role as a front-end developer. In fact, James is here today. There he is. Hey, James. Let's give him a hand. Thanks, James. Awesome story. Next, we have Jennifer. Jennifer was a teacher and worked in an Apple store. But Jennifer wanted more, so she took a risk, worked really hard, and earned her own nanodegree too. That risk has paid off too. Jennifer's also here today. There she is. Cool thing about Jennifer too is she's taken on teaching as well, so we're really excited about that. And finally, Omar. Omar's story is pretty incredible. Omar is from Aleppo in Syria. And because of the tough stuff that's happened there, Omar had to leave. Ultimately, Omar chose to change his life. He's earned 2 nanodegrees, he's enrolled in 2 more, and he's working as an iOS developer on our Blitz platform. And actually, if you search about Omar, he's very well respected in the iOS community already. Omar is also here and has made this trip. Awesome story, Omar. Stories like James, Jennifer, and Omar are what inspires every day at Udacity. It's the truth. It's been an amazing year. So, a lot's happened in a year, but let's focus on what's coming. Today we have 4 awesome announcements for you today. Roll video.
Robotics used to be a specialty field in industrial robotics where big clunky machines do repetitive tasks like welding and packaging and so on. Now robotics is pervasive. We have robotics in space, in toys, in your home.
If you think about of robotics, which is sensing, thinking, making a decision, and then taking an action, so many things in our world are using robotic technology.
I became a roboticist in the very beginning of my studies because I cared about artificial intelligence. But rather than studying in a vacuum, I wanted to build something that moves.
Often robots are seen as something very metallic and geeky. From my point of view, where I've been doing robotics for 30 years, it's not that at all. It's about soft and helps people.
We now have the confluence of reliable and cost-effective hardware paired with an amazing success and progress in deep learning and machine intelligence. Those 2 things are coming together, and I predict we're going to have a huge industry in the next 5 years. Enroll in our nanodegree program and explore with us the fascinating world of robotics.
We're thrilled. We're thrilled for this brand new program. Robotics offers solutions for some of our greatest challenges. As we confront the dangers of everything from natural disasters to modern warfare, robots are making us safer and helping us respond faster. Robots are also being used in areas like agriculture, surgery, manufacturing, and automating all kinds of things. They're being used in stockrooms and cleaning offices. As we age, we also will be able to use robots to help us in our old age. Spending on robotics and related services is going to top $135 billion in just the next 2 years. Robotics are going to improve our quality of life. The Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute here in the United States forecasts adding 500,000 jobs here in the next decade. All this convergence and opportunity makes this the right time for us to launch our robotics nanodegree. And we have amazing partners as usual. Electric Movement, a robotics company based here in the Valley, is our curriculum partner. And we have amazing hiring partners to add. Lockheed Martin, iRobot, Bosch, KUKA, Megabots, and of course Uber. Our partners can't wait to see the candidates that are coming out of this program, and we can't wait to see in this program either. The nanodegree is going to be divided into 2 terms. Each term will be $1,200, and students will be able to learn to build the software and to work on real robots in this program. Applications open up today at udacity.com. Go and apply. Now for our next nanodegree. Roll video.
Marketing is all around, constantly evolving. The world has gone digital and so has marketing. Actually, annually, about $70 billion in the US alone is spent on digital marketing.
At Udacity, we've partnered with the leaders in advertising and in social media to prepare you for a career in digital marketing.
Digital marketing allows you to unleash creativity way more than the marketing we used to be able to do in the past. When I went to MBA school 15, 16 years ago, they taught me in my marketing class, the holy grail is right person, right time, right message. The internet is the only platform that actually makes it possible. And that's why I am excited about digital marketing.
We're really excited to collaborate with Udacity to help these students out there to learn not just about Facebook itself, but really to learn the fundamentals of marketing.
We built this nano degree program to teach you the full range of digital marketing skills, from search to social media, display advertising, email marketing, and analytics.
What makes this program special are all the real-world projects that we have in it. So students get to run live advertising campaigns on major marketing platforms and then get expert feedback to improve their results.
And the biggest, most amazing, awesome advantage of taking the course that Udacity and Google have partnered on is that you get a ton of practical knowledge.
We're very excited about this program, and we're really looking forward to seeing our students launch their careers in digital marketing.
We're excited to reach out outside of our normal kind of zones of software development, AI, and data science to help you with digital marketing. Every business today needs to engage in digital marketing. Every company has to figure out how to do business on the web and mobile. To give you a sense of the opportunity, as Anka mentioned, $70 billion will be spent in digital advertising just in the US, and it's expected to grow over 40% over the next few years. But digital advertising isn't just digital marketing. Sorry, digital marketing isn't just digital advertising. Marketing encompasses content, strategy, social media, search engine optimization, search engine marketing, email marketing, and finally being able to measure and analyze that with platforms like Google Analytics. Students will learn all of those things from amazing companies: Facebook, Google, HubSpot, Hootsuite, MailChimp, Moz, and more. And our international e-commerce partners, Rakuten and Zalando, will sign on as hiring partners as well. And as you might know, Udacity always does something a little bit special in our nano degrees. And in this case, students will run actual live campaigns on real marketing platforms like Google and Facebook and learn to analyze those results, develop real insights, and you'll be able to build a marketing portfolio that employers will be excited about. Anyone can join this program, and companies can't wait. In fact, many of our partners have been asking for this one for a long time. Our digital marketing program is a 3-month program, and it's open for registration today. And we have a special. We're announcing an introductory price of $699, which is a $300 savings if you sign up this month. And for our third announcement, we already have a strong partnership with Didi, who are leaders in technology and mobility. For those of you who don't know, Didi runs the largest ride-sharing service in China by a long shot. Today, I'm excited to announce a self-driving car challenge in collaboration with Didi. Here are some of the details. The challenges will be worldwide. Anyone can enter. You don't need to be in the self-driving car program or even a Udacity student at this point. The challenge is to build something called an automated safety stack for autonomous vehicles. Some of the details. The teams can enter. The competition consists of 2 rounds. The first one is March 22nd. The second one will be May 1st. The winning team will get $100,000 in cash, courtesy of our friends at Didi. And the top 5 teams will have 2 folks that get to come to the Valley to deploy their code on the Udacity self-driving car that you saw outside when you came in. You can start forming your teams today at udacity.com. To join me in talking about this competition, Bob Zhang, the CTO of Didi, has come all the way from China. Bob, can you come on up?
Thank you. Thank you, Vish. Thank you, Vish and Sebastian. Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Zhang. I am the co-founder and the CTO of Didi. I'm very excited to be here to launch the self-driving car project challenge with Udacity, our great partner, and educator for the future. Didi is the world's largest mobile transportation platform. We founded our company 4 years ago. Now we have more than 400 million users and serve more than 20 million passengers every day. Didi is a big data company. Every vehicle working on our platform tell the platform their current location, their speed in every 3 seconds, which give us more than 70 terabytes of data every day. Our fleet in Beijing will cover every road for 300 times every day. Our vision is to change the transportation by innovation and bring the world closer. Over the past 20 years, internet technology has almost solved the problem of information sharing. What we want to do is to impact physical world, moving people or physical things from point A to B more safely and efficiently. In my perspective, in the next 10 years, there will be 3 layers of innovation in transportation. The bottom layer is the transportation infrastructure, the smarter traffic light, intelligent road network planning, and so on. The middle layer is the transition of vehicle from gas-fueled vehicle to new energy vehicle. The intelligent driving technology will make the driving more safer and efficient. The top layer is the relationship between people and the vehicle. Fewer people will choose to own a car, but just share one. We are a company which put much attention on innovation. This project won't be possible without best talent. We have already invested 5 world's largest rideshare company around the world. Today, we launched our US lab in Mountain View. Thank you very much. Some of the best talent have already joined us. Their work will break the existing technological boundaries and impact billions of lives. Together with Udacity, we invite you to join the great challenge. Let's get to work. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, Bob. We can't wait to see how this challenge goes. For those of you who haven't seen, our challenges just get incredible work by our students. Okay, finally, today we're announcing 21 new partners with Udacity, just more amazing brands and companies from around the world. We just signed Fiat Chrysler, one of the top 3 auto manufacturers from Detroit and Italy, of course, as one of our self-driving car hiring partners. Fiat Chrysler joins Delphi and Velodyne with our self-driving car program. Paytm from India, IBM Brazil joins IBM here in the United States as one of our partners. And finally, my first client out of college, Zeiss, will be recruiting many of our program grads. These partner additions are critical to ensuring we always have the best curriculum and the best jobs for you. At Udacity, our mission is to democratize education, and our most important value at the company is students first. It's what we think about 24/7. Our announcements today and this entire Intersect event are designed for you, our students. As Shanaz said, we want to make sure you get the best skills possible to achieve your dreams, so perhaps one day you can have a picture out here in the hallway. Thanks again for coming from far and near to visit us, and we're excited for this incredible day in front of you. Have an awesome day.
Me, great. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our first panel of the day, What Happens in the Year 2027. We are delighted to have 3 PhDs on this panel. Let me introduce to you Dr. Ashwin Ram of Amazon Alexa, Dr. Steve Abrams of IBM Watson, and Dr. Rana El Kaloubi of Affectiva. They will join John Manis of TechCrunch in one of the more exciting panels of the day. Here we go.
All righty. All right.
Are you waiting for sound?
Wow, really awesome crowd. Loving these chairs. I think these are like some sort of space age. The panel's in 2027, and I feel like we are definitely in 2027 sitting in these chairs. That, to me, is automatically the future. But I wanted to start off this panel before we go to our experts with getting an idea of what you all think 2027 is going to look like. And we've got some fantastic students in the crowd, some folks who are coming from industry, who are both sort of fresh out of college and you know, from many other places as well. But I wanted to just get 2 or 3 thoughts. So if you could just shout it out if anybody has any thoughts on what 2027 might look like. Hands, hands, hands. Yes? Genetically engineered babies. Okay, who else? Who can top that? Come on, somebody can. Food? What's going to happen to food? What? Oh, you're asking what's going to happen to food.
Hungry.
Oh, I see. Oh, you're just hungry. Okay, okay, I got it. All right, all right. All right, yeah, last one. Colonies on Mars. Wow, 10 years? That's ambitious. Got to get you and Elon Musk paired up or something very soon. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting how many differing opinions there are on what the future might hold. And we look back in science fiction, we look at the folks who who dare to dream, who dare to create companies here in Silicon Valley to prepare for the future. And you see a lot of different realities and a lot of different concerns related to those. And I think it's important to discuss this through a couple of different lenses. So I want to start off the panel by talking about sort of today and how today will ultimately shape the future, and then build that conversation around the industries that will be disrupted, and then ultimately conclude with a conversation about education, which is why you're all here today. So without further ado, let's start off with the first topic, which is just what is the future, or what is the present, and how is the present going to impact the future? So I don't know if you want to start, Ashwin, if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. I think from what's happening in the present that's most exciting to me is that AI is getting liberated. It's coming out of the companies and the research labs and getting into the hands of everyone here, of consumers. Think back to the last AI you interacted with, you personally interacted with, right? It probably wasn't that long ago, and it probably happens for many of you on a daily basis. So I think the fact that AI is starting to enter daily lives is exciting, and it paves the way to a future of much more intelligent devices and environments that we live in.
So you're bullish on AI, and Stephen, I mean, do you feel the same way? You guys are all, everybody on the panel for your background is coming from an AI perspective, so we'll probably get a lot of bias there, but I'm curious if you feel the same way.
That's not bias, it's just observation.
It's just reality,
It's
right?
reality.
Yeah.
And I agree with Ashwin, it's not just the interactions with the voice-activated agents that we think of as sort of the popular science and science fiction versions of an AI. It's the interactions that we have every day with systems that maybe have their backends even powered by artificial intelligence, you know, machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision. I mean, we see this in all kinds of professions where there's massive amounts of data to be dealt with, and the role that AI is playing in helping professionals in healthcare and you know, in financial services and all these different industries kind of make sense of the avalanche of data that they're faced with today. So that's already happening, and I think you know, the popularization of AI in terms of voice-activated agents is just making people more familiar with the access that they're having to that kinds of technology.
Interesting. And Rana, I want to touch on not just how AI is going to impact us in the future, but not only how we impact AI, but how AI is going to impact us in the future as well. So can you maybe sort of touch on the dichotomy there?
Yeah, so our kind of perspective on AI is that it's really transforming our relationship with both technology and with each other as human beings. So we focus on artificial emotional intelligence, and it's this idea that our devices and our technologies are going to, it's happening now, but very soon in the future, are going to have social and emotional skills. And when that happens, you can imagine, combinations of human and robot teams that work together, or even human and chatbot teams that work together. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on these AI systems, but I think it's going to also require humans to adapt in ways that we haven't really thought through, in terms of how do you become an effective team player when you have a hybrid human-machine teams.
Well, so I think the most interesting thing about that is what is the human with respect to the machine, or vice versa, right? And as we start to question these long-held beliefs about what is an artisan, for example, or what is the value of a human-made good versus that of a machine, how do you see that playing out in the next decade?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things we need to think through around that relationship, things like trust and rapport. So if you're going to delegate, a job or a task, or even some part of your life to a personal assistant, I think there needs to be this reciprocal trust and understanding. And I think we're very early in the research and the understanding of how do you represent empathy, how do you represent and model rapport using things like machine learning and computer vision and speech recognition. So.
Interesting. And so when you think about what this is going to actually do to industry and how this is going to disrupt very specific companies that exist now and that we look to now as being the leaders of our very industrialized economy, I have an interesting list here of both the top sectors for employment and also the top sectors that contribute to GDP. And I think it's interesting to sort of look at the dichotomy there. I mean, you see things for employment like retail and food services and local education, and then on the GDP contribution side, you see real estate and finance and healthcare and insurance and a lot of very different careers. And so both of you coming from a heavy industry perspective of both Amazon and IBM respectively, how do you look at those numbers and what does that really mean for the future of companies like yours? And I guess we can start with Ashwin.
So I think what's going to happen is that with the kinds of technology that Rana talked about, you mentioned artisans. We're going to democratize a lot of expertise right now that lives in these companies and lives in the hands of these people who are experts at their fields. So with the help of AI, with the help of technology, all of us are going to be able to perform some of these kinds of high-level expert tasks for ourselves. And that then frees us as humans to have the time to then take care of some of the things on your first list, things like education, things where you do need human contact. We're not going to want our kids sitting in front of a robot nanny anytime soon, right? But we need to free up people from some of the things that machines can do for us so that we can spend time on human-facing things.
Do you think human-facing is more in line with the items that I listed that were highest employment, or most in line with things that contribute most to GDP?
There's in both of those categories, there are human-facing aspects. But I think the list you had for highest employment, right? I think those those have a higher percentage of human-facing sort of needs than the other list.
So that's interesting. And Stephen, when you think about something like Watson or sort of IBM in general, with respect to all of these industries that will soon be disrupted, how do you see that playing out? Do you feel similarly that it's going to be humans and machines in all of those fields, or do you prioritize some of them sort of over others?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously IBM prioritized some of the larger industries for ourselves. So we look at financial services, we look at healthcare, but in almost all cases, actually in all cases, we really think of when we say AI, we actually usually mean augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because we talk about scaling human cognition and scaling expertise. So we think of a physician working hand in hand with a Watson-powered or AI-powered assistant that can help them do the research necessary to identify the right diagnosis and treatment plan much more quickly than they would have, so that rather than spending 3 minutes with a patient and 40 minutes on research, maybe they can spend 3 minutes on research and 40 minutes on the patient and really shift the balance of how they spend their time and do what they enter the medical profession to do, which is to care for people. Same thing when we're talking about financial services. Can we have your investment advisor kind of supercharge the way that they do research and make it easier for them to spend more time with you? And then scaling, I think the long tail of this is really exciting when you go to places, for example, that don't have access to the kinds of healthcare that maybe you'll find at some of the, I'll just pick, MD Anderson or the Cleveland Clinic or any of those major healthcare facilities. What if we could bottle some of that expertise and ship it overseas to places where the ratio between doctor and patient is not as favorable as it is here, perhaps in the Bay Area, and really make it possible for people to get better access to these products and services. So I think it's really all about scaling and augmenting human intelligence, seeing that partnership play out in advantageous ways to all of us, and then really making that expertise available in places where it's previously not been available.
And so, Rana, you have a really unique perspective here, having, you work at a startup now, you lead a startup effort. And so when you look at the sort of greater ecosystem in Silicon Valley and in other cities, across the world that have strong developing entrepreneurial ecosystems, how do you see the relationship between these larger companies that are in some ways leading the charge of, Watson as a platform or Alexa as a platform? And do you think that ultimately influences the work that either you do or that other startups that you are connected with do?
Yeah, that's a great question. We spend a lot of time as a startup talking about how do we plug into these partners, these larger ecosystems. And in fact, we talked about this over dinner last night. Like the way we see it, we are like the emotion brain of many of these other, AI systems like Watson or Alexa. And so in an ideal world, we're integrated into these platforms, and that opens our technology up to a lot more
So in the future,
developers.
you see large companies sort of leading that charge, and that a lot of what we'll see in 2027 will be the expansion of those platforms and then the growth of startups around them.
Absolutely, because a lot of it is about reach, right? And both reach in terms of impacting people's lives, but also the ability to collect data that improves the training and the machine learning kind of the drives that all of these algorithms.
Is there any downside to that? I mean, when you have conversations with venture capitalists or with other founders, do you feel like folks shy away from certain applications that maybe don't have as much ecosystem support or might not be as strategic for a potential acquisition later on?
I don't know. I mean, we prioritize some verticals that are larger than others, larger in terms of reach, but also potential impact. But I also think part of it is making the technology available so that other developers in smaller industries or niche markets can access our technology and integrate it. I'll give you one example.
Sure.
So in autism, individuals on the autism spectrum really struggle with nonverbal behavior. And that's not a market that Affectiva would go after as our main kind of market, but we have our technology available as SDKs and APIs. So, we're partnered with a company called BrainPower. They're all about autism. That's their primary market. But we've enabled them to integrate our technology without having to, hire their own machine learning team and build that in-house. So that's an example where that kind of ecosystem and opening up the technology to other partners is really critical. And Watson obviously is awesome at doing that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a lot of responsibility for you all leading the charge at these large companies, with respect to that. Do you feel that? Do you feel sort of this push to not just do necessarily what the largest market is, but to also build APIs and SDKs to address problems, sort of like you mentioned in education, that might not be as explicitly profitable in the short run, but clearly need a lot of attention and room to innovate?
Yeah, we do. So, Amazon is sort of a unique company at the scale in that our primary market are consumers, our average regular people, right? So we are not looking at particular niche applications or particular industries where there's a lot of money. We're looking at what people want. And to the extent that people want education, we've got an education division, right? So we're really trying to address the needs of millions and billions of people directly. And so that, I think that gives us these kinds of technologies enable us to scale what we do for these folks and do it much faster and much more cheaply.
And so, Stephen, when you think about that, right, and you think about sort of the mindset that you have to address those problems, do you have any particular industries from the past, let's say maybe a grandparent or somebody else in your family lineage that worked a job that no longer exists that you would sort of love to see come back? Or is there a particular job that you just want to create? I mean, if you could create sort of any ideal job, is this like a food tester meets AI combo? Like, how do you sort of explain that?
So I don't really think of it in terms of jobs from the past. I think if you look in the past, a lot of jobs that have been destroyed. I don't think anybody really wishes that they were, working the fields in the way that we had to work the fields before there was, farming automation, for example. So I think many of the jobs that have gone away have been replaced by higher value jobs, and it's helped society, it's helped the GDP, it's helped people. The way IBM looks at this, though, is that, very similar. There are certainly industries that we're going to tackle that are going to really align to, to our business needs, but the real goal is to enable a universe of developers and educators to build solutions on top of the platform. And that's probably going to lead to the creation of jobs in areas that I'm not even, really able to
You're on a
to
panel
think
for
about.
2027, so I'm going to make you come up with at least 2 or 3 things that you think could come about from that.
Personality coach for an AI.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Do you think we're going to need a personality coach for an AI?
I think we're going to need a personality.
I think that's something. So who's going to teach the AI manners?
Anybody else?
Charm school for an AI.
Anybody else got a good one? Anybody else in the audience? You guys have good ones? Somebody? You could literally shout out anything and it would count. We're talking about 2027. You could say AI walking, eating a popsicle, selling out of a hot dog truck, and it probably wouldn't be that outrageous. So, yes. What? What are we optimizing online? Help.
Optimizing our life.
Optimize our life, yeah.
Yes. Did you have something?
Yeah, so how do you guys affect the kind of compliance regulations, for example, your healthcare example?
Oh, no, so I meant like sort of like specifically like jobs that you might see in the future. Nothing? Some kind of compliance thing? Or regulatory thing?
Yeah, I was just curious from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a whole new class of AI operators, right? Like you now have medical device operators. I think there's going to be AI operators. They need to ensure that the AI systems are, complying to whatever regulations we have. I think there's going to be a lot of questions around morality and autonomy, like what can an AI system do and what can't it do, and what if it goes wrong? There needs to be somebody who can interject and reset it or retrain it. So I think there's a whole new class of jobs around that.
I agree. I think, in fact, when more seriously than the Charm School for AI, when we talk about, what are the employment opportunities? We always talk about blue collar jobs and white collar jobs. Our CEO Jenny Rometty talks about new collar jobs that are going to be created, and it goes beyond just the sort of standard STEM types of roles. We all know there's going to be a shortage of computer scientists, in 5 to 10 years, if not there's not already one. But I think there's a whole category of jobs, data curators, who's going to, monitor the training data to make sure they're not providing biased training data to these AIs, who's going to, make sure that they're behaving in a moral and ethical way, as you said, compliance to a variety of regulations, acting in a way that people like. So the Charm School for AI idea, I think, is actually not that far-fetched. There's going to be people whose job it is to monitor the interactions and customer service for the AI to make sure that it's having the delight that we expect in the customer service sector. So I think there's a whole kind of swath of jobs that are going to be created around, maintaining, monitoring, training, curating, and basically the care and feeding of these systems over time.
Yeah, I think that was a great segue, actually. Perfect, because at the end I wanted to make sure we save some time to talk about education and how we prepare to get to those points. And I think some of that's related to actually how we teach and what curriculum looks like, and some of that's related to regulation and sort of what's going to happen in that space to enable sort of new forms of teaching and learning and preparedness. And you all are at an Udacity conference today. There's a lot of conversation to be had around sort of what is the fate of the undergraduate institution, or what is the fate of K-12 education in countries around the world. So, Ashwin, when you think about a question like that, there's a lot of weight to that. But do you think that these institutions can keep up with the innovation that's happening in education, and should they?
So I think they have to get with the times, right? Like any other large institution, whether it's in any industry, things are changing, and certainly the students here are a testament to that. And people want. People want to be educated in not just in new ways, but in new domains and with new kinds of skill sets. So, my prediction for AI, for example, is I think the future of AI education isn't actually about AI. It's about people. It's going to be about how AIs interact with people. We are going to teach design, customer experience, or user experience. We are going to teach psychology. And personalities and all these kind of things, that's going to be important in an AI degree.
Do you think STEM's overvalued?
I think STEM is absolutely essential. But I think that, I love the book, Dan Pink's book, A Whole New Mind, where he talks about, we don't want to overly index on left brain skills only. I think the right brain skills are going to get increasingly important.
Gotcha, gotcha. And when you think about sort of a skills-based education versus something that's a little bit more holistic, I don't know if you or Stephen, if you have any sort of thoughts around that and the value of a nano degree in today's economy, and will a nano degree be more or less valuable in 2027?
So that's interesting. I'm actually a proponent of both broad-based education as well as targeted skills-based education, and I think they do very different things, right? So I think, especially for people that are looking for second careers or looking to augment their skills, I think this kind of skill-based education, these nano degrees, are absolutely essential, and it's a brilliant model. I'm not just saying that because Udacity asked me to come here. I think, though, that the broad-based education is going to be still an essential part of our culture going forward. I think there's going to be an interesting tension, and those tensions usually are healthy to see how the two kind of wrestle with one another. I think you'll see major educational institutions offering things that are like nano degrees, and perhaps Udacity offering more broad-based education over time as well. And these things are going to kind of, as I said, wrestle. But just to get back to your earlier comment, there's no way to say that STEM is overvalued. I mean, it's cliched, but it is absolutely essential to the future. The most important thing, though, is going to be to figure out how to take sort of the hard sciences and maths and marry them with psychology, design, human factors, because at the end of the day, it's not just how does the box work internally, but it's how does it interact with people and be part of that collaboration between human and machine, because together we're going to do more than either one of us could do apart.
Fantastic. And just to wrap up here in the last couple of seconds, I want each of you to complete the sentence in 2027. So starting with Rana.
In 2027, social and emotional technologies are going to become ubiquitous, and that's going to transform how we, quantify and diagnose mental health, how we democratize education, and I think we won't even remember what it was like when our devices didn't read our emotions, and weren't social.
I hope so.
In 2027, we will look back at our predictions and laugh. No.
That is true.
It's always the risk of these things is becoming a meme online, right?
But you're not going to let me off the hook. I'm not even going to try. In 2027, every interesting decision that we make will be informed and assisted by an artificially intelligent system or an augmented intelligence system.
Thank you.
So in 2027, I think AI will cease to be a thing. It'll be ubiquitous and invisible. It'll be in everything, and we'll cease to we'll cease to focus on it as this special entity and just take it as a part of life, just like we do with, say, electric motors nowadays. We have dozens of them at home, and we never even think about them.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciated all of your insights, and hope you guys enjoyed it too. Now it's up to all you guys to create those things and also the Mars that we talked about before the panel started. Thank you.
Thank you.
Secondary clap. Stand by for VOG and video transition. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next panel, Jobs of Today and Tomorrow, featuring Peter Lubers from Google, Gail McConnell from Career Cup, Greg Estes from NVIDIA, and moderated by Fred Vogelstein.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see all of you. So we're here to talk about jobs. We think jobs are good. More jobs are better. Okay, that's it. That's it. We're here to talk about jobs, the jobs of today, the jobs of tomorrow. This is obviously a national conversation. But it's also a critical issue in high tech. The labor market is lumpy, much as we'd like it not to be. A software company can be laying off people over here, and across the street, the software company can be having massive labor shortages. And so how do we fix this? Are we going to figure out this problem with better degree programs, more targeted education? Does any of it matter? Because robots will take all the jobs. And so our panelists think about this issue every day. On my immediate left is Peter Lubbers, who's a senior program manager at Google in charge of all developer training. Next to him, Gail Lockman-McDowell, who's the founder and CEO of Career Cup and the author of the Cracking the Interview book series, and Greg Estes, who is vice president of developer marketing at NVIDIA. So we're going to talk for about 20 minutes, and if we haven't answered all of your questions, you should get to us afterwards. So Greg, set this up for us. What's the issue that you worry most about at NVIDIA? Do we need to worry about the impact that AI is having on high tech in the world? Give us an overview, if you don't mind.
Well, from our standpoint, we have about 10 or 11,000 employees, and we're very focused on artificial intelligence. It's a singular engine that's driving us because NVIDIA believes that it is the transformative technology of our generation, right? So we're looking to hire the best and brightest of AI engineers ourselves, from self-driving car programs. We're working on things around healthcare, working around things around building platforms, et cetera. So we have our own needs. But larger than that, we're looking at how, from our standpoint, our GPUs are very involved in training in AI, and we're kind of ubiquitous in that area. So we want to create a developer community all around the world, across different parts of the platform in different vertical markets. And the question is, how can we help, working with companies like Udacity, to enable all of these engineers with these skills? And the tough thing is, and I think the core answer to your question is, what we're trying to figure out is, if you're not lucky enough to go to Stanford and be in Dr. Fei-Fei Li's class or whatever, where you have a world-class artificial intelligence expert working with you, and you're out in the heartland of America, or you're out wherever you are in other countries, how can you get that same level of education? How can you get that leading edge work to work with Google's TensorFlow, or to learn how to program an AI system for robotics, or any one of a number of things? And that's how we see it. And so our focus is, from a developer standpoint, is to build this platform so that people can learn to do that and get that hands-on experience that's going to let them lead to be able to get those jobs no matter where they live.
Right. And Peter, are you approaching this problem the same way, or because Google is primarily a software company, do you guys look at it with a slightly different tilt?
Very much a pretty similar way. We work very closely with Udacity on creating all these great courses, and we do that from a sort of a developer relations perspective. And so we look at that we want to inspire and train developers globally, and at Google we like to do that at the largest scale possible. And so I think we come at it in similar angle, where we just want to equip everybody equally with the same sort of learning tools. Great example, and one of your questions was is AI going to take over? We actually recently had the TensorFlow Dev Summit here in Mountain View, and it was a very popular event. And one of the things about this whole concept of is it taking over is it was a day of learning, but one thing that really stuck out to me was presentation from Lily Peng, a doctor on the brain team. Mm-hmm. And she was explaining how there's the leading cause of the fastest growing cause of blindness is actually diabetic retinopathy. And so it's very preventable. And she was actually explaining how by taking a simple photo of a retina, and then running it through TensorFlow, you could actually get on par with the top doctor. And so it's not just creating the jobs in just TensorFlow development, but it's also creating jobs on the periphery of that and the whole ecosystem. So that's kind of how we look at that.
Gail, one of the things that you help do is you help you work at this from the interviewee side of things. In this fast-changing world, what are some of the things that you advise in both your books as well as the consulting work that you do? What are the things that you help people try to understand and how to be more flexible in the world that we're dealing with?
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for the idea of leveling the playing field. That some people may walk into the job search with an advantage of going to the right schools or having the right companies on their background, but not everybody has that, obviously. And everybody can do things in their own time. One of the things that's great about the tech industry is that it's actually pretty open-minded about different people's backgrounds. Even the very, very top tech companies who have, in some ways, the most ability to be elitist about people's backgrounds are pretty open to saying, hey, you're self-taught, and that's awesome. You may not have gotten an algorithms class or whatever at MIT or Stanford, but you have learned this stuff on your own time. You've built projects. So I push people a lot to be realistic about what they get in their background, what their background has given them, and find ways of compensating for that, whether that's taking algorithms classes online, whether that's doing a lot of projects on their own, and that is great from a company's perspective too, because they see people who have not only learned the stuff that they need to know for that job, but they've also shown the initiative to do that. And it's a very, very positive thing, actually, to see on someone's background.
Greg, one of the things that you and I talked about earlier was the idea that the issues that we're talking about here aren't just Silicon Valley problems, but national problems. How can the issues that we're talking about here be used to expand the reach of what you do, for example, and the people that you recruit?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very much not a Silicon Valley problem. It is absolutely true that companies like Google and NVIDIA and Apple and Facebook and others are all fighting to get the best talent around AI, right? So if you're here and lucky enough to have a background, maybe to have a nano degree and something having to do with artificial intelligence, it's going to be like lions on a zebra to find the best engineers there to do that. But again, what if you're in other areas, and how do we make that work? It's interesting that our local congressman here, Ro Khanna, I think he was in office about 10 days before he was in our offices saying, what can you do at NVIDIA to help bring your AI expertise excuse me, into the heartland of America? People are concerned about AI taking away jobs, right? And it's absolutely true that you can't take somebody off of a tractor somewhere and then turn them into an AI developer instantly. But it is true that particularly as we expand into online training and learning, you can make it very widely available to others. And I think that's one key. The second thing about international is that when we look at the research papers that are coming out, on artificial intelligence, a very high percentage of them are coming out of China. And we know how many developers there are in India and what a great opportunity it is there. And certainly for self-driving cars, a lot of the leading edge work that's going on right now, to just use self-driving cars as an example, is coming out of Europe. So the opportunities are everywhere, and therefore the need is everywhere. So the question is, what are we doing to make it so that this level of leading edge training is available to everybody? And again, I think that online classes and making things very simply available to everybody is part of it, so that people can have those skills in a lifelong learning way.
What are some of the, Peter, I remember the days at Google where it talked quite openly about its elitist culture. This goes back probably 10 or 15 years ago, but Google, like Amazon, like many companies in high tech, prided themselves on hiring the best and the brightest, and you could expect to have to submit college transcripts and SAT scores in the early days of Google and Amazon to try to get hired. Obviously, the world has shifted in many ways, and companies like Google have gotten much more sophisticated in the way that it hires people into these programs. What are sort of some of the outreach things that Google is trying to do, both in Silicon Valley, but also, outside, and to maybe like loop in sort of some of the people in, say, Michigan, for example?
Right. Well, I'll start out right away with the fact that there are nano-degree students that have been hired into full-time positions now at Google.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you a lot.
Right.
And that's partially because, exactly as Gail mentioned, the nano-degrees are project-based. It's not a knowledge test. You can build your portfolio. So that is happening. That's pretty exciting to me. Like, we've built these programs. We didn't build them as a pipeline into Google, but we built them for really everyone, including our own Google engineers, to take, to skill up on Android and so on. So that's exciting. We have a number of people hired there. In terms of outreach, we're working pretty hard on setting a certain, like a quality bar that people can sort of understand is a sort of a top-level bar that we drive. It's our developer certification.
Right.
And so developer certification, we rolled out the associate Android developer certification, so that anyone, anywhere, it's online, but it's also performance-based.
All right.
In the sense that you build projects and you show you can debug an app, or you can, so we're pushing more and more towards that. And in the career pavilion later today, we have recruiters from Google, we have people from the certification, so definitely check that out.
Okay. Gail, what are sort of, is the gap, say, for someone who didn't go to one of the top schools and wants to try to figure out a way into one of these top companies, is the gap too big? What are sort of some of the ways that we can narrow the gap?
Yeah, no, I don't think the gap is too big at all. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, the top companies cannot hire from just the top schools. There aren't enough people there. And even if they hired MIT and Stanford's entire class, and the entire class of the top 10 schools, that would not be enough people. Which I think is part of why they are actually, despite their reputations, they are actually pretty open-minded. When I do work with companies on their hiring process, it's actually the B-tier companies that are a lot more insistent on let's only hire from the top schools. The top companies are let's hire whoever we can. We need every smart developer we can get. And companies, one of the things I've seen shift with the interview process over the last 10, 15 years is not actually the questions themselves. Candidates now are getting the same questions they were getting asked 10 years ago. But the thing that has shifted is much more of a understanding that we have to get our candidates ready for the interview process as well. So that comes, very standard across the top tech companies are, the recruiters are saying, go read Cracking the Coding interview. Go, here's our own blog post about the interview process. And some companies, like Facebook, has gone even further, and they have me come in 2 nights a week to teach the same exact material to whatever the next set of candidates coming in, just to help those candidates get ready with the understanding that, look, the interview process has false negatives, and there are some great people getting rejected, and we want to make sure that as many great future employees get an offer as possible. And so I come teach the same class 2 nights a week.
How early should we get involved in this, in the process that you're talking about? I mean, should we do this at the college level? Should we do this at the high school level? How do we, are there tweaks that we can make to sort of the existing education system that would make the candidates that you guys are seeing, that would make the pool a little bit easier to get access to?
Kindergarten?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
no, I think the earlier the better. I think one of the big things that people miss often is the soft skills. I always recommend Gail's book to everyone to, like, even if it's not a SWE, a software engineer position, to read some of the soft skills, because you're going to be working with people, you're going to be working in teams, and there's a lot of things we can be doing in that, and you're going to be working. You have to show something that you've been working on. And so the earlier we can do that, of course, there are things that don't make a lot of sense. And I like some of the nano-degree ideas that are, you're also building your LinkedIn profile in a certain way, and you're building your resume. And so there's other parts to getting hired than just the pure knowledge that you need to have.
Right. I mean, I guess that leads into sort of the, and we might as well have it here, the STEM versus liberal arts debate. One of the interesting things that I've observed, at least in the 15 or 20 years I've been writing about tech, is that I think we talk a lot about how liberal arts education is less and less relevant, except I think that one of the things I've noticed is that if you look at a lot of CEOs of tech companies and other important companies in the Fortune 500, many of them actually did have liberal arts degrees. And so I'm interested in sort of whether or not we're talking about getting people too narrow too soon in terms of that discussion. Do you have any thoughts, Greg?
Well, one is that we've concentrated a little bit maybe in this discussion around developers and therefore that are engineers. But I got 7 open requisitions for marketing people right now that I would love had some kind of a background in AI. Maybe they took a couple of courses on it or on their own time, or maybe they did whatever. So it isn't that... People say the strongest and healthiest dogs are mutts, right? When you can mix the gene pool and have people who have elements of both, you actually have great employees, right? So I don't know that I favor either one as much as I favor a cross between the two of them, and I think people who have both of those skills are going to be the most successful.
Right, Peter?
I would say the same. One of the absolute most critical things that employees need to have is communication skills, right? Mm-hmm. And really, you need a more like a whole person, not just a coder. And one of the things that kind of was eye-opening for myself, in India, we have a large pledge program to train 2 million Indian developers. And it seems almost impossible, but we're actually making some great strides there. And these are mobile developers. So if you think of an Android app, often we talk about developers as sort of like the people that write the Java code that compiles into this app, but there's so much more to that entire ecosystem. You have, the assets, the graphics, the video that needs to be created to highlight the app. So there's so many other things in that larger ecosystem that all require nuanced skills, and great communication is key, right?
Exactly. Gail?
So, I think it's incredibly important for everybody to, regardless of where they're going in their career, to learn how to write well. And that doesn't mean writing a beautiful story. It means be able to write an email, be able to write a basic document describing something in clear, concise language. I think learning how to do public speaking is incredibly important. It won't be important necessarily in the first 2 years of your career, but once it becomes important, it's going to become so important, yet you're not going to have the time to get that good at it.
Exactly.
And I think it's also important for everybody to learn a comfort with numbers. And that doesn't have to mean calculus. I think very, very few people are ever going to need calculus. But just like be able to work through a practical word problem. I think those things are incredibly important. However, I think the push towards everyone should go get, liberal arts degrees are great, is, I think, misguided. I don't think that liberal arts degrees necessarily teach better writing and communication skills and public speaking than a math and science degree does. I think you can do actually, I mean, pretty much every school has liberal arts requirements. And in a lot of ways, engineers are often actually great writers because they're not writing the fluffy stuff, they're getting to the point and saying what needs to be done. And so I am actually more on this side of advocating STEM degrees because you get that comfort with math and that confidence with it, but you also hopefully have enough of the public speaking and writing. That's really, which is really, really important.
Although in that context, that means that like it's up to the universities to maintain their core requirements and not drop them in favor of letting people like start out just taking math and science and not learning how to do any of the soft stuff.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think universities by and large, I don't think universities do a fantastic job for STEM or for liberal arts teaching writing. I don't think they're doing a great job there, but I think you're getting some in either direction, and I don't think it's actually tremendously different.
Right. Are there some things that are there some things that universities both at the elite level or at not the elite level can do differently, or that you guys are sort of talking to about the way they shift in terms of shifting the way they think about this? I mean, I know, Greg, when you and I were talking a little bit, you were talking about some of the work you were doing with, was it San Jose State?
Yeah, they're an example, and we're early days in discussions with them. But I think we have a program, we call it the GPU Educators Program. We basically have artificial intelligence, deep learning curriculum that we will give to educators. Peter can talk to it, but it out to the schools so that they can incorporate that. So that's one thing. A second thing is that NVIDIA has something called the Deep Learning Institute, which is just a name that we give to the hands-on developer training that we have. And so one of the things that we've done with San Jose State style schools and also IIT Bombay, top of the top kind of schools, is to hold one-day workshops where students can come in and get this practical, because the schools are really good at teaching theory. They're less good at teaching the applied, learning that you have to actually go build a self-driving car, for instance, which schools have, other than Udacity, have a self-driving car program. But there's a lot of need for that. Tesla's got to go hire engineers, and Audi and Ford and everybody else, right? So we're trying to work with schools to think outside of just whatever their core curriculum is, and to augment that out of industry, where we can come in and then apply extra, very fresh, using the latest versions of TensorFlow or Caffe or whatever it is in terms of AI, very fresh thinking, and give students a hands-on experience that they just can't get as part of the normal curriculum. And then we help them with the normal curriculum too.
Is there a good, for lack of a better, is there a good age at which it makes sense to investigate the kind of super specific training that we're talking about outside of the degree programs? I mean, does it make sense to do it like in between high school and college? Does it make sense to do it while you're in college or afterwards? What do you think, Peter?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's about striking the right balance of the right age where there's the interest all of a sudden. Like, for example, when my youngest son was, I think, about 11 or 12, he got really interested in Wireshark, the packet analysis, because it turned out his school was communicating the grades in the clear. And so, but there has to be sort of a driving factor behind something that gets your interest, and all of a sudden there's a practical connection. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, if that doesn't exist, I think it's very hard to get motivated by it. But yeah, everyone's different, and I think it's just more, and with everything being available online, it's so easy now to get into it. You don't have to wait for a class to start saying, okay, well, at 10 years old, we start doing this, but everyone's on their own. But yeah, I think it's based on a lot of different factors.
Right. I was going to say, let the record reflect that despite all the advancements in technology that we've made over the years, 10-year-olds are the same, from generation to generation to generation to generation. They all want to figure out a way to change their grades without the teacher knowing.
Did not actually change the grades.
I didn't say, I'm just saying he wondered about it. Go ahead, Gail.
I think you can learn this stuff at any age. If you decide in college that this is a career direction you want to go, that's great. If you decide 10 years, 20 years after college, that's great too. The major thing I would tell to a college student is just, hey, be careful if you start going down some path because that's what you think you want to do right now. Don't neglect everything else too because, most people actually, whatever career path they think they want in college, most people aren't doing that in 10 years. So stay well-rounded.
Right, right. Trying to think, we've got 5 minutes left. I would like to open it up for questions. I don't think we have mics, but I'd love to try to see if we can get a couple of questions from the audience, if that's okay, if you don't mind yelling. I'll repeat the question.
What do you see as prospects? What do you see as prospects for those that have advanced more in their career, managers, CIOs? What do you see as prospects coming for those advanced in their careers?
That's a good question. Thank you. I don't think AI or lifelong learning changes one of the fundamental tenets of how business works, which is the higher up you go, the fewer jobs there, right? So there's only going to be one CIO in a company usually, and so on and so forth. So, those opportunities get lower. But I think maybe to the heart of your question, I very much was not talking about just entry-level positions for new engineers coming out of school and coming in. I didn't get an opportunity to comment on, what's the right age. But I'm over 50, so I hope that you don't have to be in high school to learn stuff too, right? So here, I'm all in for the old guys. Because I do think that people who are mid-career, maybe this is the answer to your question, I hope. People who are mid-career have every opportunity to be able to pick up some new skills and come in because we need people, I'm going to guess, that Amazon and Microsoft and Apple and Facebook and Google and others need people who have that experience that they've gotten through their life experience and their job experience, but they've just augmented it with some fresh skills. And so when you're having a conversation with a hiring manager, you can speak extemporaneously about some of the latest software developments or the way things are happening in the world. And you can pick that up in a lot of places, several years after college. And I think that creates opportunity everywhere.
So I could go get a self-driving car degree and you would hire me. I'll take that as a no. Anybody else?
Hi. I'm curious about how AI, as we're moving more and more towards cognitive technologies, I'm curious as it's going to play as far as psychology. As a developer today, we're writing code for AI, but really in 10 years, we're really going to be psychologically manipulating these machines into doing what we actually want them to do. How do you feel about that?
Anyone want to take that?
I will, I guess. If I understood your question correctly, and I'm not sure I heard it very well, but it was about if you're developers now and then AI is happening, how are those skills transferred when you're not writing code in the same way for AI? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. People sometimes say that AI is software writing software, and it is true that it is a very different thing to be able to learn to manipulate and work with a neural network or a training set than it is to sit there and write a whole bunch of code. If you think about all the different things that need to be taken into consideration for simple things like speech, right? You know, I'm the biggest Amazon Alexa fanboy that there is, and you know, I just love being able to interact with my Echo and Alexa, and a lot of that is around understanding speech and being able to hear that. Well, there is a significant amount of development work and research that companies like Amazon have to put into in order to create the training systems, and it's constantly evolving. And what's happening on the inference side right there at the device. And I think if you have coding skills, and if you understand information theory, or if you're a data scientist, you're right in the right strike zone, even if the way that you're going to accomplish that might be a little bit different. So I would feel very good about developers who are classic computer science developers being able to move into this new world and just slide right in. And I don't think that there will be a lowering in the number of jobs at all. I think there's going to be more jobs and more opportunity. Let me just, if I can take 30 more seconds here. Thank you. I'm working with Procter & Gamble, and P&G has this new consumer application called Olay Skin Advisor, and a woman can take a selfie, and then it uses AI to understand, based around that, what her skin health is, and it tells her what her skin age is. That's a gutsy call. And then can recommend Olay products, you know, to work on different aspects of, you know, fine lines, wrinkles, or whatever. But like, dial back the clock a few years. Do you think that Procter & Gamble had a team of people who were developers that are working on code to do stuff like that? No. And so all of the people that are working on things like that, and that's just one example. I could give you 100 more. It's creating opportunity in the marketplace, sure.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists. We're done.
So we have a bunch of seats that are open and a ton of people standing up there, so we can't bring people from the outside. So if you have a seat open next to you, can you raise your hand so all the people standing can come and sit next to you? So let's all move over and sit. It's the only way we can get other students and employers to come in. So our next speaker is really one of the highlights of our entire day. If you go through the app, you guys have been waiting to hear him talk. Without any further interruption, please welcome Sebastian Thrun, founder of Udacity.
Good morning. I'll try again. Good morning. My God. The reason why Udacity exists is you. I have this dream that if we can make education globally, universally available, if it doesn't matter whether you live in the Middle East or in South America, you get the same education everywhere, that we can completely transform the world. I want to thank all of you for the trust you're putting in us by giving us your time, your attention, and coming here. You guys are my heroes, and we do what we do because of you. Thank you. Life is short. Life is crazy. A few months ago, we started a nano-degree program on self-driving cars. Anybody here enrolled? Woohoo! Awesome. That's great. We are the only institution in the world who teaches self-driving cars. We have over 5,000 students, which means we teach more engineers for this trade than all universities combined. And I have been blown away what you guys are accomplishing. And I'm not saying this as a novice or as an educator. I'm saying this because I've done a thing or two in self-driving cars myself, and I know how hard it is. You've been blowing my mind. Oliver, who runs our local car team on the car side, will have a session this afternoon and show what you guys as students have accomplished in our car in terms of self-driving car capability. And not to steal his thunder, but you students just met a major milestone by building and enabling our car to drive itself from here to San Francisco and El Camino Real 100% autonomous. This is a call. I can tell you, when I founded the Google team, for us to do the stretch from here to San Francisco, the same road, took more than a year of work. And it took you guys, students, thanks to your contributions, about 3 months to build that capability. So the Udacity self-driving car is not just an educational program, it's also a milestone in self-driving. We're actually now officially a California-registered self-driving car company. How cool is that? The students that made this possible are probably in this audience, are people who are totally amazing. Elena is not with us, she's in Belarus, but she did really blow-away work on behavioral cloning, a project that all of you are working on. In fact, she's not the only one. There are about 5,000 other great people doing amazing work on behavioral cloning. But she's one of the people who worked day and night to really put a component of our software together. Vivek is also not here today, unfortunately. Is actually a professor himself, PhD professor, and while being a professor, got bored with what professors do, which is writing proposals and stuff like this, and wanted to go back to coding and found another degree and became a student again. And he's also not just writing, he wrote a piece of software that blew my mind. He was able to track other cars just using a camera alone, something I'd never been able to accomplish at Google when I was there. He wrote this in record time. He's also a beautiful community person who really helps other students like crazy to make advances. And lastly, third person I want to mention is John, and John actually is in the audience. John Chen? There he is. It never occurred to me that students like John and many other students could write software at a level that I think is on par with the absolute best self-driving engineering I've seen in my life. And I'm humbled to see, oh my God, I always feel like when I look at these results and Oliver flips these videos by me, I'm always humbled to realize that your IQ is probably twice my IQ. And I get the privilege to work with all of you. We have a Udacity race team that's entirely here. It's entering. Can you guys stand up? So it's, let's see, Anthony Navarro, Christy Cull, Jerry Kong, Maruf Man, Nadia Yana, John Chen, Dean Liu, Claudio Salvatore Demutis, and Chris Grundig are the names. And they are joining the Polysync self-driving car race event on our behalf. Hopefully Udacity wins. Udacity! I want to take some time and answer any question you might have. We have 2 microphones. There's one over there and one over there. I usually just speak as a professor. If you see me in class, I don't probably listen to you very much. I'm just talking. So it's a good chance to discuss anything that's on your mind. Here's a question right here. Use the microphone, please. Thank you.
So currently, self-driving cars, the car itself is X amount of dollars, with the sensors and everything is the same price of the car itself. And I think the biggest impact could be made in the third world countries where the roads are not always perfect, and you can have like self-driving cars which are building roads. You know what I mean? Like the machine itself is building the infrastructure for other machines. So how do you envision cheap self-driving cars like we have mobile phones, so every person has a version of their own like personal transportation?
So I hear you ask two questions. One is, how do you envision cost-effective, cheap self-driving cars? And the second, why don't cars build their own roads?
Yeah.
So I've never studied cars that build their own roads. That is a new question. I also don't know what's, I mean, obviously we have heavy automation in road building. I see less of a reason to get rid of humans entirely for road building than road using, because we build the road once, but we use it like 10,000 times every day. The costs are actually massively shifting right now in this field. When I first worked with radars, which is what usually drives the cruise control, the cheapest radar I could buy was $60,000. And if you go to Delphi or Continental or Bosch today, you get the same radar for about $80 US. And the difference is that we now have scale products, you call it adaptive cruise control, that use these radars, and they're being manufactured in the millions as opposed to the individual units. The laser world hasn't reached that level yet. So if you go to Velodyne and order a laser, it comes back 6 months later with a handwritten serial number. They build them still one-on-one. But there's a whole bunch of great startups in that space. And if you have started aspirations in space, it's a great space to be in. We have actually moved a lot into camera images. So what Oliver showed you later is most of it is driven by cameras. And cameras have become commodities. They're super cheap. So I think the costs will not be the issue. The real challenge is the brains, is to make sure that they are 100% safe and not just 99.999% safe.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Can you hear me okay? We're a deep learning company, and we're looking at the underprivileged people who didn't have the chance to get great engineering education or math and programming and AI. And we're kind of stepping up a team to do data labeling, collection, and annotation, things like that, for refugees in Jordan, as well as India and things like that. But was wondering, like, what is Udacity's thought process for enabling these people who didn't have such a great education to contribute and grow jobs and do things that are interesting and participate in the economy?
If I had if I could have my way and had infinite time, then I would love to address every job in the world and help every single person in the world. We have, at this point, 25,000 or so enrolled students, and there's 7.4 billion people. We're actually doing very, very poorly relative to what we should be doing in our company. And we're growing, obviously, rapidly, and we are trying to build the trust. But we are very much arguing internally whether we only do bleeding-edge Silicon Valley, which is self-driving car, robotics, as we announced today, machine learning, or whether we also start going down to lesser paid jobs, require lesser pre-qualifications. We have some beginning nanodegrees. Deep learning is among them, introduction to programming. And I think we're going to stay in the tech space for now. We stay in the tech space for multiple reasons. One, it's super hot. It's very fast-moving, and it can be conveyed online very well, whereas other fields like nursing and so on would probably have a much more physical dimension. But yes, I want to get to the point where every single person on the planet has a chance to get an education that fits them. Just can't do everything at the same day, unfortunately. That's the main obstacle. But yeah, I think we're making progress. There's a lot of work left for us to do.
Yeah, if you have any thoughts on, enablement or things others that can do, not necessarily that. Sorry, I'm saying if you have any thoughts on things that others can do to enable this class of people or these underprivileged people, would love to hear your thoughts on that, and I'll conclude with that.
We have a very, very active scholarship program now that Stuart Fry is building up. And it's been my personal passion. I make no secret of this. It's my personal passion to go to the Middle East and help jumpstart. I've talked to the King of Jordan. We're in negotiations with them. We have now ground offices in Saudi Arabia, specifically so we go to the Middle East and say, look, guys, anybody here who grows up can become an Android developer. I really make this to be the Udacity contribution to world peace. I don't want to just sit there and say things, I want to do things. And I feel, especially in the Middle East, to be honest, great education is actually not as accessible as for me here in America. But yeah, if you have suggestions, send me email. It's thrun@udacity.com.
Great,
and
thank you.
I'd love to hear. Yes. You go over there and there's a line.
Thank you.
One line up.
I guess this question kind of marries with the previous question, but Udacity started with when the nano degree started, it was the front end nano degree, and then very quickly career services came up around that and started reviewing like GitHub and LinkedIn and resumes, and now is moving into AI and machine learning, and there's so much growth and expansion, and the career services team has grown with that also, and helping hundreds of students find jobs, and with like the nano degree plus. So what do you think are the next steps of Udacity and career services team moving forward from this point on helping students connect with more jobs?
Yeah. When we started Udacity, we really thought education isn't a thing in a vacuum you do for yourself, although for some people it is. But we really felt if you're serious about education, then we got to be serious about jobs. And that made us basically start two companies, not one company, right? So a job company that helps people find jobs, and an education company. But with either piece missing, it's almost like a water pipe that's clogged somewhere, so you go to this point and can't go further. That's why in the last year, we probably put even more emphasis on jobs and job placement and job services, career services, than we put even on education, to be honest. Strategically, it's been really important for us to do both, because we believe we see ourselves as a pipe, right? Like great people come in, and we find them a little bit, and then we have to find them a great place in life. Going forward, we're just going to do more of this, honestly. We launched a site called Blitz. Blitz is, I guess, a German word. Our site where all of you, upon graduation, can interact with companies. We cater Blitz a lot to startup companies. Startup companies in the Valley are desperate to find talent like yourself, turns out. Any machine learning person usually gets a job here. Any self-driving car engineer typically gets a job, robotics person. And we found that by marrying you guys with startup companies through a platform like Blitz, we can de-risk it for everybody. We can de-risk it for you because you're not moving your entire family to a place, a company you don't know. And we de-risk it for the startup company because they can try you out and work with you and see if they like working with you. And that's been phenomenally successful. We've placed a good number of people in jobs afterwards. I just want to stay creative and innovative and see what it takes. I mean, we are reinventing everything. We're building basically a shadow university system here and reimagining what a university should be in the 21st century. We're just at the beginning, honestly. We fail. There's students who can't find jobs. There's students who aren't able to give the self-confidence to find a job. But we're doing our best to make that thing really happen. And I'm very proud of our progress so far.
Awesome. Thank you.
So in the logging industry, when a tree comes down, it's directly replaced by a new tree.
Which industry, sorry?
In the logging industry, when trees come down,
Yes.
they're immediately replaced by the new tree.
Yeah.
And that's responsibility of the logging industry to do that.
Yeah.
When AI and automated cars, or even ride sharing, takes away jobs, like I know Udacity does a great job of creating opportunities for learning and taking on new jobs, but do you feel that there's a responsibility on the large industries to either slow down or directly replace those jobs? Because some people can't wait the 6 months it takes to ramp up in an entirely new career.
We are in a transition period that's extremely significant, and I don't think people see this with open eyes yet. We are in a period that's akin of the beginning of the agricultural revolution when the steam engine was invented. And while agricultural machine never really replaced people in the physical sense or duplicated people, it made farmers 100 times as efficient. And before that, 90% or so of Europeans worked in farming. After that, it was less than 2%. What's happening today is that artificial intelligence will take any office job that's repetitive, will make people 100 times as effective. So if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, if you're a medical doctor, if there's a whole spectrum of jobs, 75% of Americans work in offices. There's a whole spectrum of jobs that people do the same repetitive stuff over and over again. And we're going to invent AI that makes people 100 times as effective. And if you don't believe it, check out the cover of Nature about a month ago on skin cancer, where students from Stanford accomplished the training of a deep network of the type we teach here to detect skin cancer at an accuracy that rivals the best human dermatologists. So in the future, rather than going to a doctor, you pull out your phone and you get the same diagnostic quality. Now, the responsibility of new jobs is a tricky question. I think it's going to put a burden on all of us. I think the agricultural revolution was great. I'm super happy I don't have to work in the field every day. I'm actually happy to be here. None of you were here without it. And all the stuff we care about, from our car to our microphone to our smartphone, wouldn't exist and didn't exist prior to the revolution. It did, however, change the notion of human labor. Had we gotten together 400 years ago, you would have stood there without a microphone and saying, look, I work in the field every day, and what's going to happen when we invent stuff that's stronger than me? What's going to happen to me? And what happened is, life became so much better. We started learning how to read, how to write, how to communicate, how to do research, how to invent things, and how to make the world better and faster and safer. That's just going to be on steroids. So what I envision is that thanks to AI, I think AI is the single biggest thing happening today, that we can get rid of repetitive, remedial, boring work and replace it with creative work. All of you are incredibly creative. And most people I know are insanely creative and are being forced to do uncreative work every day, and that pains me. We're going to go into a phase where everybody can do just really creative work. They can build, say, a self-driving car in a day, or a Didi in a day, Bob spoke earlier, or you can build an Amazon in a day. And you have this idea in the evening, and you push a few buttons, and the next morning you can try it out. There's always, I mean, these transformations, talking about responsibility, they're always global, and technology is just an enabler, to be honest. They affect real people. And it's important to have a dialogue on this. I think it's unstoppable. I'd rather be on the tsunami than under the tsunami. And quite frankly, I'm actually really excited to live today because I firmly believe that only 1% of interesting things have been invented yet, and 99% has not been invented yet. And you're the people who are going to invent the next percent of cool stuff to invent. Yes?
Hey, first off, I'd like to thank all of you guys, at Udacity. You guys have been a true inspiration to me. I love learning, and you guys have given me higher kicks than alcohol or illegal drugs or legal drugs combined.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot. Keep up the great work. So now coming to the questions. I have two questions. So
Thank
what
you.
I see in today's world is a little bit concerning, a lot of polarization. There's a disparity of sorts. You have people who love to learn, who use Udacity and other platforms to learn.
And yourself.
Who use internet to learn, to become more aware of what's happening. But at the same time, there are people who are using it for other purposes. It's like when television was invented, people called it the idiot box. But television had some good stuff as well. So today, it's the other extreme. Though information is on demand, people choose to check out stuff which really is not helping our society, if you know what I mean. We are creating antisocial elements or dumbed down people who can fall prey to anything they see.
Yeah, they tweet at 5 in the morning, I know.
So, how do we solve this? And, an extreme example is there's one segment which is saying climate change is real. It's a real problem. But suddenly, there is another group saying climate change is hoax.
Yeah.
Now, what do we do about this?
So, first, thanks for your compliments. And honestly, I love any of those emails I get where someone says, here's something you did great in my life, or you did for us. And we pass them around the company every single time. We have about 250 totally dedicated people who work day and night to make these things possible. So every time, thank you so much. Any of us who listen to another thing, we're actually really grateful for this. It's wonderful for our people. We're very mission-driven. It's a question that I don't think Udacity can fix, but I'm an optimist. And I would all of you to be optimists. It'll always be the case there'll be a plurality of opinions. And it'll always be the case that even the majority opinion can be wrong. If you look at the history of this country, for example, not too long ago, we believed that a marriage between a black person and a white person was not okay, or it was not okay to have two men or two women marry, and that opinion was revised. The same happens in science. If you look at medical treatment 100 years ago, you'd be shocked what people believed at the time before we had evidence-based medicine. I would argue we should be optimistic for two reasons, okay? One is the world is going in the right direction. Science is winning, hands down. And there are hiccups and there are moments of desperation, but in the grand scheme of things, science is winning. And as a result, we all live better lives than even our parents' generation. Second reason is, if you're not an optimist, then it's not going to happen. We need the optimists in the world, like yourself, to make the change happen. We need to believe it. And whatever we believe will happen, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my question is basically on the hardware computation capability. What are the challenges that lie ahead? Because there are millions of algorithms coming up in terms of machine learning and other stuff. And there are new algorithms coming up every day. And the amount of computational capability needed for these algorithms are really heavy. So what do you think are the challenges that lie ahead in terms of hardware computation?
Lighter, you mean?
Sorry?
The challenges that LiDAR has?
No, challenges lie ahead of us.
Oh, the challenges lie ahead?
Yeah.
In terms of machine learning?
Yeah.
If I were to characterize, say, machine learning is certainly the big new thing in artificial intelligence. And I think what we're learning is that programming is kind of obsolete in that a software engineer is someone who instructs a machine with like millions of rules for every contingency. And it's really hard, as you know, because you're all learning it and doing it professionally. And that's why you pay them so much money, because it's so hard. The lesson for me in deep learning is we can instruct a machine with data. And data itself takes up its own life. Very much like the way we raise children. We don't raise children by giving a rule for every contingency in the first 18 years. We let them teach based on data. So we're making computers learn very much human-like. But there's still an enormous gap between both. Where computers today succeed, and I think it's phenomenal to work on it, to be honest, is when you have vast amounts of data of something highly repetitive. Like, for example, diagnosing skin cancer, we had 129,000 images. No human dermatologist can ever study 129,000 images. So when data, the size of data vastly outweighs what a human could do, you can get to the point where the machine becomes better and better and better. What machines don't do at all, in my opinion, is go beyond this. Like inventing or discovering spatial relativity or a new law in nature, or being able to take the learnings from over here and transfer it to a completely different field over here. And I'm not even sure we have the right algorithms quite yet to do this. But obviously, as machine learning and computers in general proceed, I would love to see work on how can we build a universal learning machine and get to more of a broad AI than a very narrow AI. Today's AI is so narrow that the Google self-driving car cannot fly a plane, and AlphaGo can't play chess, right? So narrow. Anyhow, last question, and I apologize for cutting it short.
Okay. First of all, Udacity obviously excels as an education company, so I have a question about the job aspect of Udacity. So at AAAI, you said that being a Udacity nanodegree grad comes, maybe priority treatment in the hiring process. But the plus degrees do have a lot of promise as well. But what does that specifically mean for us? Does it necessarily mean an automatic interview at say Google, or does it mean like your guaranteed spot at Udacity Blitz and further showcase your work in the case of a plus grad, or just simply career advice? What specifically do you mean?
For those of you who are not familiar, we created this thing called Udacity Plus a little more than a year ago, and it's basically Udacity nanodegree, where we say, if you are eligible to work, so you can't be 5 years old, and you're interested in a job, and you can't find one, we just give you all your tuition back, no questions asked. And we did this in part to hold ourselves accountable, to make clear to ourselves we are serious about jobs, and we can't just fake it and say it. If we fail in doing our mission, then we deserve to make no money. I think right now our job success rate is north of 90%. Last I heard it was 96%, so I'm very proud of this. But we have paid some students money back. Thank you. Yeah. But we cannot, of course, guarantee an interview. We do have amazing partnerships. And it's actually interesting because I sit on the side where I talk to companies like Tesla and so on, and various other tech companies, NVIDIA, Google, of course, one of our prime partners, AT&T. And the companies we talk to are desperate. The reason why Mercedes, for example, is so active in building self-driving car nanodegree, or Google with Android, and NVIDIA, all these wonderful companies, Didi, is there's actually a thirst for great talent with a great skill set. And there's an understanding that colleges tend not to produce the right skill set. Machine learning is the hottest thing on the planet right now, one of the hottest things. There's only one college that produces a machine learning degree. It's called Carnegie Mellon. Like, why is it just one university? Why isn't there like 4,000 different degrees? So we believe by working so closely with such fantastic companies, we get a leg up in job placement, and we're willing to pay for it if not. Thank you so much. You guys are my inspiration. I really believe there's going to be a future where we all learn all our time, and we work really close with the companies that we'd love to work with and we adore. And you are making it possible. You are partners, and you are students. Thank you. Person is a really, really good friend of mine. We've known each other for at least 8 decades. She has a prior life, like me, as a college professor, and then recovered, like me, and joined Silicon Valley, worked at Google X, turns out, worked as one of the founders, worked at Nest, and building learning thermostats, doing machine learning before it was hot, then moved over to Apple for a short while, and now it's back at Nest. Yoki Matsuoka.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for letting me be here. I'm really, really excited to be here. So I heard that there was a robotics program that was launched today, and I've been studying robotics for probably over half of my life, so I thought I'd share a little bit of a passion of why I've been not giving up on robotics, and I'll probably keep going for a long, long way. So the title is Robots Without Belly Button. Hopefully you get to go through a little bit of the journey. I'm a little bit of an unusual roboticist. I didn't start out on the right way, which maybe many of you have, and many of the young kids are now doing, which is through first robotics, tinkering with electronics, learning to code. I did none of that. I really started out playing tennis, and this is all I wanted to do all my life. That's it. Turns out, when you bet on one thing, sometimes it doesn't work out. But I got injured so much, in college, at some point, I had to think of something else to do. Luckily, I loved math and physics, so I banked on it and said, okay, brainstorm, tennis, math, physics, what can I do? What I came up with was this. I came up with the idea of building a robotic tennis buddy for myself. Great idea. I could build great legs that can run around on a tennis court on the other side and has head and holds a tennis racket, smart enough to know how to play tennis with me. On the day that I want to play really well, it would stimulate me. On the day I'm just depressed, it would make sure that I win. But you know what? It turns out to be this journey is really long, and when I went from undergraduate robotics lab, where professor didn't discourage me from going and doing this, and imagining in my head, one day I'll build a robot like this, something that will continue to help me not beyond tennis, not just tennis, but beyond that. So I went to even grad school and built this thing. This is now, I was at Berkeley and then I went to MIT and I helped build this robot named Cog. It still has a belly button if you look really carefully. I was building and aiming to build a robot with a belly button because that's all I knew. I knew that robot was supposed to look like us because Jetsons and RoboCop and Star Wars taught me so. But you know what? As I started building this, and I started to get more and more curious about how human brain works and what does it really mean to do robotics, and I wanted to apply myself differently, I started to think robotics a little bit differently and come to this picture. As you take the class of robotics, you might not be building a humanoid robot. You might not be learning how to build a precise little details of fingers or legs, but you will definitely be learning this. You'll be learning how to sense the world, and then use that information to think really carefully. And I heard a little questions related to machine learning earlier. And of course, then outcome. We have to take action, whether with the motors or some other way, to take action into the world, and then let it be, and then again, sense what had happened. And that feedback loop, that's what makes robots robots. And if you encapsulate that in a mechanical system, then it doesn't necessarily have to have a belly button or legs or arms or eyes. So that's how I view robotics, and that's how I have been really utilizing some of the expertise that I've learned in robotics into different ways. So here's something that you would definitely not say it's robotics. Well, with my definition, this is one of the simplest versions of robotics. So it's a light switch. On the top, there's an occupancy sensor attached to it. This occupancy sensor knows when you come into the room, those conference rooms you walk in and the light turns on, and that part seems okay, you don't think it's magical, but it turns out to be pretty hard. So you have also experienced a failure case where you're sitting in and typing away and the light turns off, and you're like, crap, what's happening? So it's thinking and then deciding, making decisions about when to turn off the light to be good about saving energy and also not be annoying, right? Now it starts to get more complex, more than you might imagine from something on the wall. But that's the simplest type I would call robotics. Now you can go to the extreme. That's where I've been throughout the graduate school journey, and then when I was a professor at Carnegie Mellon and the University of Washington, I just wanted to go in a rabbit hole as deep as possible in robotics. So I built this robotic device and specifically wanted to build a human body part that made human hand. Well, belly button. Well, maybe it doesn't make human. Anyway, so the hand is amazing, right? So somehow we were able to build this society because of this thing that we got. So wanted to understand why it's so amazing. Can we build it? Can we replicate it in robotics? If you see how robotic hands are now, it's very disappointing still. It can barely carry and grab objects and then manipulate and move things around. And if you could spin like something in your hand, that's a journal paper right there, right? So, so I built that, spending years figuring out how the bone shape should be, putting 30 motors in the forearm, squeezing them in, pushing the technology of motors, pushing the technology in terms of sensors, sensing from the skin, sensing from the pool. The muscles have sensors too, and then using all this information to do this complex motion. Now on top of it, I wanted that to be controlled by human brain signals. So working with people with neurological disorders, having them, or people who had, when the arm, where they had amputation, having their brain think about moving the arm they can no longer move, I wanted this robot to move. So getting from different kind of sensor mechanisms in the people's brain or on the surface, and then taking the electrical signals, interpreting that, sending them into the 30 different motor signals, and then having fingers move. And that's where my research was. And then this is also really exciting, and then I'm sure because of all the things that we've done and all the graduate students that we've studied with, there are things that we made profound difference for the future of people's life. And that's exciting. But wanted to, so throughout the spectrum of things, one of the things that really caught me, and then I continue to have it as my theme, and I want you to think about it as you think about robotics program too, is this sharing of robots and humans doing some tasks together. Ultimately, I mean, it's even from the beginning, when I wanted to build this tennis robot, I wanted to build it to help me, human. And really, robots are about how can we enhance humans to be able to do more, or things that they lost how to do. So in this case, this is a prosthetic hand tying shoe. Now, here's an interesting problem. Should this hand have full machine learning, and the brain signal simply say, tie shoe, and then says, OK, I know exactly how to do everything, and then just go ahead and I recognize the shoestring, move all the joint angles, and then do it, the brain didn't do much. Or should the brain do everything as we do it, right? We tie shoes with commanding all muscles individually to move individual fingers to tie shoe. Which one should we choose to do as we move forward in the world where robots are in our society working together? I don't have an answer for it, and it turns out it depends on who the user is. We've learned it in different ways, even from Nest product that we shipped, that what people ask for is different. Some people who are missing arm wanted to do everything on their own. Even if it took 2 years to learn it, they wanted to learn it themselves. Some said, you know what, I'm lazy. Please just do it for me. If that technology is so advanced, great. So I think that's the thing that I keep thinking about as I work for a company like Nest. Nest has a mission to really create a home that takes care of people inside it and the world around it. And that really hits me. I'm building robots to help people. And OK, we built these robots from Nest. For those of you who don't know about Nest too much, I'll give you a quick example of a thermostat. So the thermostat we build, most of the thermostats out there are things that you go in a room and then you move a lever or turn it, and then the room temperature goes up. You leave the house, and then you forgot to turn it off. Well, you're wasting energy. So next layer of technology came and then said, OK, programmable thermostat. So we program it and then know ahead of time when you're going to go out of the house, we'll turn it down. Well, it turns out you don't necessarily have a very predictable life every day. So we came up with a thermostat, which is not just loaded with with the temperature sensor, but occupancy sensor, light sensors, and all kinds of sensors jam-packed in there, knowing what status you might, what status your house is in, what kind of things you might be doing, and making sure that we understand and partner with you how much energy you want to save because you touch it when you want certain things to change, and then listen, and then make actions in terms of what temperature to make the house. It seems kind of simple, but turns out it's really a geek inside, and I used to say I'm the geek inside, sitting in there and making sure that you're comfortable and also at the same time saving energy. So we've done that, and I kept innovating in people's homes for all kinds of different products. And throughout this, some of the things that's falling out that I love is that we're starting to help people. So using those robotic technology in homes, this is a guy named Derek. He was at work. He has Nest products in his house. And one day he received a notification. One of the devices that we built took action to let him know that there was a stranger or some movement that he doesn't usually see happening at his front door when he's at work. Turns out what he saw was his dad, who's a little bit have a dementia, roaming around, not knowing what to do. So Derek was able to immediately take an action, call neighbor and said, my dad is at the door, can you actually help? And then was able to get grandpa in the right spot, and he was able to get home correctly. And thought, wow, it's so great. The device that we built that sensed, thought about it, took action, was able to help someone. Same thing here. This family had also Nest products, thermostats and smoke detectors, CO detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. What happened for this family was that, again, they were outside of the house, and then and during the day, they got a notification saying that their carbon monoxide level is getting high. But not only that, our smoke detector talked to our thermostat and said, hey, dude over there, maybe you are connected to furnace. You might be producing carbon monoxide, so can you turn it off? So by the time they were even home, those things were taken care of. And I think those kind of things that we can start to imagine doing in a house because we're sensing, because we're thinking, we're taking actions. That's what the core robotics is, even without the belly button. So this is, of course, where we want to get to, right? Like, we want to live in a house where there's a robot that you can order around, and you don't have to cook anything, you don't have to clean dishes, and you don't have to do any of that. But, you know, I'm still okay myself building a robot, or even maybe living in it for the time being. So as you go through robotics program and think about whenever you hear the robotics, try not to necessarily think about that thing with the belly button.
Let's send those people out.
Think of something like this in your head, and then we're going to be on the same page, and we're going to be starting to really help a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, next up is a fireside chat featuring Steve Blank, adjunct professor at Stanford University, and Sebastian Thrun, founder and president at Udacity.
Hi again. Steve is one of my personal heroes, and a person I've learned from more than I can describe. He's a successful serial entrepreneur, having started 7 companies that made it past the $1 billion market cap, including Epiphany is the most recent one. He's a world-class instructor. His teachings are being adopted by more than 50 universities. And he's hands down the best marketeer in Silicon Valley. Just to raise expectations.
But he couldn't be here today, so they got me.
He's innovative when it comes to company buildings. He can sell you anything, to be honest. He also innovative when it comes to teaching. He's a dedicated teacher teaching at Stanford. Most recent course was called Hacking for Defense, where we did what?
So Hacking for Defense was basically a way to solve problems that are facing our country to keep us safe and secure that our Department of Defense and intelligence community have, who are dealing with threats in the 21st century that they never imagined in the 20th century. And if any of you dealt with the government, you know, they're still using quills somewhere in the organization. Yet, so we took the lean startup methodology, that is, how to operate at speed. The Department of Defense got some real world toughest problems and basically put them online for our students and allow students to work on in 10 weeks to see if they understand problems, go out and talk to 100 customers, partners, stakeholders, people with money, contractors, you know, others, and build minimum viable products for different branches of the Department of Defense intelligence community. We started the class last June, ran it as an experiment. It was so successful last month, this January, 8 other universities are now teaching it. We'll have 15 universities online teaching it by the end of this year, and hopefully it'll match what we did for the National Science Foundation and have 50 some odd universities solving real world problems for our Department of Defense and intelligence community, with the unintended consequence of the sponsors, the people who give us the problem, are watching this methodology and now they're raising their hand and saying, can you come in and teach us how to think and operate at this speed with this process? So that's what Hacking for Defense was.
You mentioned lean startup.
Yes.
And you wrote a book on this, The 4 Steps to Epiphany, I guess, which I read. Great book, by the way, highly recommend it. And then you taught a course on Udacity on this.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So, so the 4 Steps to the Epiphany kind of kicked off what's called the Lean Startup movement. It articulated one of the 3 pieces of what eventually became Lean, the customer development process of how you actually get outside the building and start talking to people who you think want to buy your product someday or have the problem you want to solve. A mistake we used to make in the 20th century in Silicon Valley and others is just assume I have an idea, and I have an idea, write up a business plan, turn it into slides, try to raise some money, build the product, ship the product. No one buys the product. Fire your head of sales, fire your head of the marketing, you know, founder becomes chief technical officer or something, and then, you know, like, go out of business. And I said perhaps we ought to, before we like go from vision to PowerPoint slides, we might want to validate some of those hypotheses. And in fact, the key idea was about lean was understanding that we had built tools for 100 years in business schools about how to execute known processes. That is, business schools created, you know, strategy and operations, et cetera, all assuming that all you had was a process for execution. That's all you needed to do. No one ever noticed that startups actually weren't in execution mode. They were actually searching to validate whether these things were true or not that they believed.
The spaghetti thing that you throw them all, right?
That's right. So to answer your original question is, I created a new class at Stanford called the Lean Launchpad, which was adopted by the U.S. National Science Foundation, and then every federal research agency in the U.S. now mandates this as a class. You have to watch the Udacity videos. If you're a scientist who wants to get an SBIR or STTR grant, that is a commercialization grant from the U.S., you have to go through the Udacity videos to kind of get funded, and you go through the class.
These are great videos. In your book, you have this episode that I remember where someone brought you in after firing the head of marketing with a business product and asked you to sell it. And I think you went to their clients that were almost buying it and said, what if I give it to you for free?
Yeah. So one of the great tests is a pricing test. Is, you know, oh, everybody's excited. Yeah, they'd really love it. You know, Steve, it's on our forecast and whatever. Well, have we closed yet? Well, not really. So you go into a client and go, you know, if I gave you this product for free, would you buy it?
Yeah.
Well, and if you get a well, you realize the salesperson was just like confused. And the other bounding box I sometimes would do is, oh no, we deploy 10,000 of them. Well, I was only kidding, it's $1 million. It's $1 million. We don't pay more than $350,000. And they have literally told you what the upper end of the bounding box was. And by the way, that works like more times than you would believe. The other thing I teach my students is when they're out, oh, everybody loves the thing. They loved our slides or minimum viable product. Did you ask them how much money they have in their wallet? What? Did you ask them for an order? Well, it's not done. Well, they told you they'd love it, and the great way to get somebody out of their office is, this is great. When you have it, come on back. Well, okay. Why don't you just say, empty your wallet, I'll put it in an envelope, I'll seal the envelope, and I won't spend any of the money, but since you love the product, I'll spend it when I deliver the product. 90% of the time, well, I really didn't mean I loved it that much. So in customer development, you find out a lot of stuff about outside the building. But I have to tell you, one of the best things that did happen to me was being a Udacity course, which I think is EP 245 on Udacity.
Correct.
Because it allowed me to reach students and students to understand what was going on in Silicon Valley, thinking about lean startups at a scale and a reach that just wasn't possible.
I have dozens of emails that students wrote me and say, I watched Steve Blank's class, and he just saved me $150,000 of funding. I would have built this stupid thing over here. And then I asked my future customers first, which cost me like a day, and realized this is the wrong solution for them. Who is in a startup or aspiring to be in a startup company? Good number. Highly recommended. What Steve has done is turn the entire process upside down. What most of us do is we wake up in the morning, we are geniuses, and we're going to invent this amazing thing. And then we start working on it. And as we work on it, we put our sweat and heart into it. And after half a year, we are unable to admit to ourselves it might be completely useless. And then we go out and go to people and take it. In Steve's class, he makes you go to customers and don't even show them what you're doing, but ask them what you want.
And try to understand deeply their problem, because you might be solving your problem, but you might not really understand their problem. And in some cases, they might not even understand what their own problem is. So Sebastian, you missed one thing that smart people do, is that not only do you have this great idea and start building it, but you put in every possible feature you could imagine people are going to want. And so when you ship it, you're surprised that people only use, feature 12, 19, and 27, and the rest of it is just waste, as Eric Ries called it, waste. The Lean Startup ended up being, as I started earlier, my contribution was customer development. Alexander Osterwalder added something called the business model canvas, and Eric Ries, smartest student I ever had in a classroom, was the one who realized that agile engineering, not waterfall, was the perfect match to the customer development process. And that stack, business model design, customer development, and agile engineering, is what's called the Lean Startup when applied to startups or now companies or now government agencies trying to move at speed and search for things that might not be obvious what the solution is.
I want to open up for questions from the audience, so please line up behind the 2 microphones over there, and when you speak closely.
This is an Ask Me Anything except for funding.
Yeah. They can ask.
They can ask, but
you don't like them that much.
The answer's no, so it's a...
You don't like them that much.
Right.
I wanted to be the younger Steve, the 18-year-old Steve, just from high school. Okay? You don't have to tell me everything you did, but what advice would you give to yourself from today's perspective?
Volunteer for everything. So my whole career was turning the common wisdom on its head. One is, as Sebastian mentioned, an adjunct professor at Stanford in the engineering school. I teach at Berkeley in the business school. I'm a senior fellow at Columbia, and never graduated from college.
Really?
And so my education at 18 was, I joined the US Air Force during Vietnam and spent 4 years in Southeast Asia learning at high speed in sheer chaos and terror sometimes. And so, but I did reverse the standard military advice was you never volunteer for anything. And I learned that's just wrong. Yeah, you might end up cleaning latrines, which I did when I volunteered sometimes, but I also ended up learning some spectacular stuff. And the other piece is show up more than anybody else. I would show up more, I'd work harder, and I'd be there when they were, blank, he keeps showing up. Okay, you over here. Half the time there were crummy things to do, but the other half the time, I got opportunities and jobs and careers, and this goes for anybody looking for a career. Show up, be present, work hard, and by the way, the third thing is speak up for yourself. While we love to think the world is a meritocracy, you need to be clear and articulate about what you accomplished, and more importantly, what you want to do. I remember being one of my first jobs was a training instructor. I was teaching microprocessor design at a startup called Zilog. And the manager of training and education had just gotten fired. And there were all of us sitting in the training department looking around who's going to manage our group. And finally I realized I could be a good manager and walked into the VP of sales who ran the department and said, I want to run the training department to teach microprocessor design and the rest. And he said, what took you so long? We expected you in here 2 weeks ago asking for the job. and that was like a key lesson for me as well. You think maybe, no, whatever. Ask for what you want, because the worst thing that could happen is you get a no. So I know you asked one question, but that typical marketeer fills up the whole room.
You start over there.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So I founded a startup, and we had I had engineers come on board, and we sold the product, and we had clients, Genentech and VMware, big companies, and we ran it for about 5 years profitably, and we never got venture money, and we were actually pretty proud of that. Just in January, we decided to close it down, because every time we looked at the future and we looked at funding in order to grow it, it seemed like we couldn't make the numbers work. And we still had paying clients when we closed it down. Did we miss something?
Sure. So one is, certainly in Silicon Valley, we tend to think everything has angel or venture capital around it, and there are some classes of businesses, and in fact, you should run the model in hindsight to just kind of, when you get some distance, to think about, could this thing have scaled with risk capital, which is essentially what angel or professional venture capital is. That is, you don't take money because you could get money, you take money because is there value in accelerating hiring or salespeople or equipment or scale? Could this thing have turned out differently at scale? First, post-mortem thing to run. There are other things that just don't necessarily scale. And in fact, if you think about it, in the US, according to the US Department of Labor, 99.7% of all companies in the US are under 500 people. That's what we actually in the US define as small businesses. And small businesses still make up Main Street entrepreneurship, and most of them are not scalable. And you might have actually could run the analysis and say, Steve, it was a small business at its core, and we ran it as a small business. We made some money. We had a great time, but it was not a scalable business. And so the first question you need to ask is, am I building a small business? No shame in that. That's actually what most, in fact, what I call, that's what normal people do. They either build small businesses or go they work for real companies. It's only crazy people who inhabit Silicon Valley and entrepreneurial clusters who are usually unemployable by anybody else. I think that's right. Both of us are sitting up here. And the good news is that, you know, like, it's fun. The bad news is, it becomes your life rather than a job. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you for taking my question, and thank you for being here. I actually use your course in a course that I teach at the junior college. We teach a computer science program, and then into the AA degree, I have a final projects class, and I bring in guest speakers, and I run videos, and then I have them watch your class and to bring in some insight. Taking the principles that you have developed for leans and cool things like, what do you see the impact of education as a whole? Because there's a lot of things that are coming down the state in curriculum development and accountability and measurements and this measure that, and what is a demographic and all these other things that are getting measured, but they're all on different scales. So we're not going to get anything intelligent. It's just going to be noise.
So I'm going to answer your question in a very funny way, specifically about teaching innovation and entrepreneurship. You know, when I started teaching, my friend John Rubenstein, who used to run hardware engineering at Apple and then Palm, who I knew for decades, looked at me as an educator and laughed hysterically. He said, Steve, you can't teach entrepreneurship. You were born entrepreneur. You know, like, you can't teach people how to be entrepreneurs. And I thought about that, and I said, well, that's funny. I am teaching entrepreneurship. But it troubled me for decades because people actually asked that question a lot. And it turns out we were asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether you could teach entrepreneurship. The question is, who can you teach it to? This is a big idea. Because the mistake is that thinking that entrepreneurship is the same as being a Java programmer or an accountant or something else. If you want to start something, you're closer to an artist than any other profession. You see things that other people don't. You hear things that other people don't. Artists you see a blank canvas, they see Starry Night. You see a 12-foot block of marble, they already see the Pieta and they just need to remove the stone. So for 500 years, we've understood that artists can actually be trained, but you can't assign somebody the job of sculptor or painter or composer. It's something inside them, but you could teach them. But we also realized 100 years ago that teaching art appreciation to the entire community is actually valuable not only to the artists, because they'll have people to buy their stuff, but more importantly, to society in general. I think there are exact parallels about entrepreneurship education. That is, for people who desperately want to become entrepreneurs, you will fight your way into finding entrepreneurial education opportunities. But for the rest of you, whether you're in a corporation or you're a senior manager or somebody just interested in college and understanding business, in the 21st century, we ought to have the equivalent of entrepreneurship appreciation classes just widely spread out through our culture. So that's my best answer.
You mean the people who admire you?
I'm sorry?
The Steve fan club.
It's less the Steve fan club. It's the Sebastian fan club, or the Elon Musk fan club, or the Steve Jobs fan club. In fact, think about it. We now understand that it's great to expose students to music and painting and whatever when they're in elementary school. And my point is we should expose students in the same way from elementary all the way through K-12, let alone college, about what entrepreneurship is and why it's different. Big idea. Why it's different than ending up teaching students about how to set up a lemonade stand. It used to be the only K-12 business classes that you would get is, oh, let's teach them how to set up a lemonade stand. That's not entrepreneurship. That's how to set up a lemonade stand. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So firstly, I'm really glad that I'm here. It's awesome to hear from you guys, and it's really inspirational. What I was wondering is, I imagine, since you've literally written the book on entrepreneurship, you've interacted with so many businesses. What is the craziest problem or challenge that you had to address, and how did you tackle that, working with businesses or with your own business?
What's the craziest problem that I've ever seen? Yeah, actually, the craziest problem was in one of our last classes. Actually, was hacking for defense problem. Any of you heard of the Navy SEALs, the underwater divers? And turned out the medical director of Navy SEALs gave us a problem. And the problem was the SEALs were spending too much time underwater, and they were getting the bends and whatever. And so the medical director for the Navy SEALs said, here's the problem for your class. You need to design some carbon dioxide sensors that the SEALs could wear so they could figure out, they need to stop diving. And that's a pretty definable problem. Students were excited, mechanical engineers and computer people joined the class. They formed a team. They interviewed the medical director. He defined the problem. And of course, the first people they went out and talked to were the Navy SEALs, who said, really? You're going to strap new sensors on us to tell us that we can't dive, huh? Really? They said, well, it's 0902. Yes, everybody synchronize your watches. At 0904, those sensors would be at the bottom of the effing ocean. And so the team came back with a real problem, but they were smart enough to ask, here's the big idea. They asked the SEALs, that's interesting. Why are you spending all the time underwater? Well, glad you asked, because no one else has. Our problem is we don't know where we are in 3D space. There is no GPS unless we're near the surface. If you could make us a deployable GPS buoy when we're 100 feet under the water, we'd be spending like a third less time. So they went back to the medical director and said, the problem's not a medical problem, the problem's a 3D geolocation problem. And that's what they spent the next 9 weeks working on. Does that answer your question?
Awesome. Yeah, I know that. That's perfect. Thank you.
I suspect we have only time for one more question.
Who has the best question? Is that the best question?
No, sir, thank you.
No pressure, no pressure, all right.
So you alluded to this in your book and in your talk today as well. Sometimes it's a challenge to elicit what the business really wants or your customer really wants.
Yes.
What have you learned ever since you've written the book that has changed your views, or something new that you have learned that can help a budding entrepreneur get that from their customer?
Well, everything I've written, Eric Ries has written, the Design Thinking School at Stanford, everybody's written a lot about how to kind of understand customer problems. And I guess the biggest thing I could offer is there's a ton of tools to do that. But this is over time what makes entrepreneurial fingertip feel, meaning you get good at it at first over practice. The other thing I'll suggest for any of you thinking about a startup, your first idea is almost always wrong about what the customer wants. Go ask Sebastian.
Oops.
Oops. But it's less so, am I nailing it, understanding it right, but what you do when you find it out, and that's called the pivot. Eric Ries named it, but I drew it. He named it, and I think the pivot's a key idea about this whole process, is after you get repeatable data, and by the way, when you're getting the data, it doesn't come in the form of a memo. It's to SpaceX did some massive pivots, and great founders, by the way, always reinvent the past. Oh, we had planned that all along. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Honestly, eBay was exactly going to look like this, and SpaceX was going to look like Udacity. We rewrote history. And I know
what are you talking about?
I know you haven't. But my point is, great founders pivot and then kind of have this past amnesia where they're new marketeers that tend to create a new persona of what happened. But that's what allows 21st century startups to operate with speed and urgency. And so, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
It was a good question.
I want to thank Steve. You're one of my heroes, and you can probably understand why I always love to listen to him and learn from him. We have a class online. If you care about it, you can buy his book. And he's very available. He writes a blog, which is really, really interesting.
SteveBlank.com.
SteveBlank.com. And for all of you, I think this is Silicon Valley pure. You got half an hour of one of the most amazing men on the planet. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Sebastian. It was great.